just might want to mute
his phone. All right. We're going to get started now. So good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Restoring Promise Young Adult Reform Initiative webinar. Today, I'm thrilled to announce the official launch of our Restoring Promise initiative. Before I get further down the road, I'm Alex Frank. I'm a senior associate here at the Vera Institute of Justice and our Center on Youth Justice, and I lead our work on young adults, including the Restoring Promise initiative. So Restoring Promise is an initiative that seeks to transform jails and prisons for young adults across the country. And this initiative really started a little over a year ago when we partnered with the Connecticut Department of Corrections to transform their approach to working with young adults in their care. And that resulted in the design and implementation of a housing unit for young adults sentenced to their state prisons, now known as the TRUE unit. In the spring, Vera expanded this initiative by partnering with the Middlesex County Jail and House of Corrections in Massachusetts. And today, we're thrilled to announce that we're accepting letters of interest from other corrections agencies across the country interested in joining this initiative and transforming the care and custody for young adults in their care as well. Before I introduce our fellow panelists and talk about the agenda for today, I did want to take a moment to acknowledge the events of last night in Las Vegas. We have participants from across the country, and I want to recognize that folks may have been impacted in different ways. I just wanted to take a moment of silence for that. Thank you, everyone. So, joining us today, we have myself, Alex Frank. We also have our partners from the Connecticut Department of Corrections, Scott Semple, the Commissioner of the Connecticut Department of Corrections, Warden Scott Urfey, who's the Warden of Cheshire Correctional Institute, the facility where the young adult unit is located, the TRUE unit, which you'll hear more about. We have Warden Kenneth Buttrick and Deputy Warden Juliana Madano, who were the point people when we started over a year ago to kind of spearhead this project in Connecticut. So today, we're going to use this time to both talk about why we focus on young adults, why is this important. We'll hear directly from Commissioner Semple about why this was important in Connecticut in particular. We'll talk about moving from idea to implementation. So we'll hear from Warden Buttrick and Deputy Warden Madano about how they went from idea to implementation and worked on this project with us in partnership over the past year. And then we'll hear from Warden Urfey about the TRUE unit. What does it look like? How does it run? What's different about it? And then finally, we'll talk a little bit about joining the initiative. So I mentioned that today is the official launch of the Restoring Promise initiative and the start of us accepting letters of interest from corrections agencies across the country. And we'll be doing this in a three-step process. So we'll talk about that after we hear about what this work actually looks like on the ground directly from the people who are doing it. And finally, we'll have time for questions. So you'll see at the top side of your WebEx, there's a chat feature. And then at the bottom, you'll see that there's a QA button. You can submit questions as we go along using the QA feature. And then we will pose some of those questions at the end to the panelists. We will also, for questions that we don't get to, we will be collecting them and answering them offline and then posting them on the Vera website, and I'll share at the end where that will live so that folks can locate them and get the answers to their questions. So, first, why young adults? Commissioner Scott Semple, can you speak to why a focus on young adults was important in Connecticut, important to you? What was the inspiration and motivation behind this?
Sure. Good morning, Alex, and good morning to everyone.
As Alex indicated, I'm Scott. I'm the commissioner here in Connecticut and have been doing this for almost 3 years now. It really is a journey that led us to this point in time where we are in terms of specializing our services for this type of population. It began in June of 2015, and I had the privilege of being invited by the Vera Institute in cooperation with John Jay College, our university on criminal justice, to go and visit the European model. So off we went in June of 2015 to Eastern Germany, beginning in Berlin, and we went to 5 different types of facilities to learn about the aspects of what is referred to commonly as the European model and how it differs from the model here in the U.S. One of the sites that we visited that really piqued my interest was a site in Eastern Germany that was dedicated totally to what I've been referring to as emerging adults, 18 to 24, 18 to 25. And there was a heavy emphasis on the whole notion of neuroscience and the impulsivity and manipulation that comes with all of that, and that's in some level of vulnerability. What was so interesting is that their response to impulsivity, they took more of a clinical approach in terms of interventions and things of that nature. I was very attracted to that, and I had the privilege of going there with our governor. And when we returned and we did some internal debriefing, I presented the idea of trying to do something along the lines of what Germany had in place here in Connecticut. The original intent was, well, let me give some history. Before we do that, I queried what the numbers looked like in Connecticut, and just to put some perspective to other jurisdictions who may be listening, Connecticut's current sentence and accused population, it's a unified system, is a little over 14,000. It is the lowest it has been since 1993 and almost peaked out at 20,000 in 2007. So we've been on a downward trend. But when I got back in 2015, the population was a little over 16,000. We queried this particular age group, both men and women, and we had roughly about 3,400 folks within this age range. And then we dug down deeper and to try to evaluate, okay, in the interest of impulsivity, what do the rate of incidents look like for this target population? And we found that they were responsible for about 25% of the incidents that are occurring within our correctional facilities. In addition to that, we also learned that their rate of return to prison or recidivism was much higher than the rest of the older population as well. So we started to dive into the whole notion of neuroscience, brain development, and what happens with the frontal lobes of the brain and when it matures and when it comes, your brain is fully functioning. And we knew that we had to make an effort to try to educate staff in terms of what this means and why this is happening and what should the response be in order to improve the overall environment within our correctional system, not just because the original intent was to repurpose, because of the large number, an entire facility specific to meet the needs of this population. What happened in Connecticut was we ran into some budget constraints, and we took a different approach. So we downsized to this specific unit that, as you had indicated earlier, exists at the Cheshire Correctional Institution, which is located in a central portion of our state. So one of the things that we knew is we needed some help. And when we first started to research the whole notion of neuroscience and brain development, there really wasn't a lot of information out there that we could directly apply to a correctional environment. So this was unique, and because of the work that we've done with the Vera Institute in the past, we had some communication, talked about the possibility of doing this here in Connecticut, Connecticut being within close proximity to the main office in New York City. Then we get to meet Alex and her colleagues. So they came to Connecticut, and we began to put together, first we needed to learn, does this exist in any part of the country? And we found that it does in part, but not to the degree, as I'm told, that of the things that are going on here in Connecticut. And I say that in the most humble way that I possibly can, because I'm always learning from different jurisdictions around the country, and for me to say anything contrary to that would be foolish. But what we did learn is that many states may separate this population, may take varying different approaches with this particular population. The intent here was to go in a more therapeutic direction, to create something different, to improve the overall wellness within our correctional facilities and for our staff, who, quite frankly, are all being exposed to varying levels of trauma because of the rate of incidents that I mentioned earlier. So off we went on this journey to begin the process of investing and capitalizing on the possibility of having a positive effect on this population, with the whole notion that more than 90%, as many of you who work in the correctional field know, that this population will be going back into our communities. Our goal as an agency is to reduce recidivism. This target population has a high rate of return. Therefore, it would only make sense that we put extra emphasis in this regard. Now, fast forward, and since then, the numbers of folks that are incarcerated in that age range in Connecticut has lowered substantially, under 1,000 now. We identified a specific facility where we were going to launch this program, but what we really needed to do is make sure that we had the proper investment and buy-in from the staff to impact the overall culture of this particular facility, which is a maximum security environment, and try to give our best effort, our due diligence to ensure that we would monitor it closely with key performance measures and report back to our staff in terms of what's working and what's not. To do that, we had to go against the grain of science. And one of the unique things that happens with this particular program, and I'm not going to get too much into the details because my colleagues will get more into the weeds. The facility administrator and the committee that was involved in preparing us to go down in this direction wanted to launch something unique. It was, and as I indicated before, it was kind of against the grain of the science, and that was to take advantage of a mentorship program. So what was unique about it is what we were doing was targeting primarily folks who are incarcerated for significant periods of time that exceed, more often than not, 20 years of incarceration, but have been incarcerated since they were in juveniles, now are in their late 30s or 40s, and we wanted to do some specialized training to train them as mentors to these mentees. And that was very much out of the box for me, very much out of the box for the staff that I have the privilege to work with. But in order to get buy-in, we needed to listen to folks who were involved in the committee in preparing this and collaborating with Vera. And we also had to have some flexibility in terms of allowing folks to embed some of their ideas in the overall program that we were implementing. So we're very much in our infancy on the launch of this program. One of the other things that I felt was extraordinarily necessary was to avail ourselves to what I believe to be a benefit of partnership with the loved ones of these folks that are incarcerated in this particular unit. I don't know about other jurisdictions, but that flies in the face of an adult correctional environment when you're dealing with primarily adults, and that's difficult enough. But what we found was that creating these partnerships were extremely beneficial in terms of gaining trust with this population and showing them that we have something different and we're prepared to deal with it. Now, Again, emphasizing that this is a program in its infancy. I expected a high degree of impulsivity because we were targeting a more impulsive population. That did not happen at this juncture. There have been some experience of impulsivity, but little to none. And so I've been asked, what do you attribute that to? And and this is just my own take on this, I think it is the mentor-mentee relationship that has significantly impacted the experiences that would normally result in some level of impulsivity to where there's a level of trust and hope and dignity. So they're telling me my 10 minutes, I'm up, so I'm going to hand it over to my colleagues.
Thank you, Commissioner. Sorry, Alex.
You're good.
Okay.
Thank you, Commissioner. So I'm going to hand it over now to Warden Kenneth Buttrick and Deputy Warden Julianne Madonna to talk about how they went from idea to implementation, the inspiration that Commissioner Semple talked about and the goals that he identified, what the process looks like. So Warden Buttrick and Deputy Warden Madonna, I'll hand it over to you.
Thank you, Alex. Specific to the committee work, in January of 2016, myself and, as you mentioned, Deputy Warden Madonna were appointed co-chairs charged with developing a proposal to repurpose one of our existing facilities or a portion thereof to serve the programmatic needs of offenders ages 18 to 25. Over 20% of our population in Connecticut fell within that age group, and what was clear was that the young adults recidivate at a higher rate than the older offenders. Younger offenders, particularly men, tend to be more impulsive and more violent than older offenders. Our data show that instances of institutional misconduct in our facilities, including assault on other offenders, as well as our staff, were disproportionately higher among the 18 to 25 demographic. As Commissioner Semple stated, we've learned that portions of the brain do not mature until a person reaches their mid-20s. In March of 2016, the Young Adult Offender Committee was established. Staff from all disciplines in the Connecticut Department of Correction were selected to be a part of this very exciting and innovative approach to managing these young adults. To say that the staff from the Vera Institute of Justice, particularly you, Alex, have been an indispensable partner along this journey doesn't even begin to explain their role in this collaboration. From the onset of the project, staff from Vera have been active committee members, researchers, confidants, and organizers, and without a doubt, we would not be here today without their dedication, passion, and commitment to youth justice reform. And as I mentioned earlier, staff were selected as members from the committee from all disciplines. The committee was comprised of custody staff from correction officers, lieutenants, captains, and deputy wardens. And from programs and treatment, we selected correctional counselors, counselor supervisors, and deputy wardens. Also represented on the committee were medical and mental health staff, school teachers, a school principal, maintenance staff, physical services, staff from parole and community services, and our accredited training facility, the Maloney Center for Training and Staff Development. We were aware that a project of this magnitude, so far and away from what became the correctional norm, could only be successful with the buy-in from, as Commissioner Semple refers to, the boots on the ground. At the onset, the Young Adult Committee convened roughly every 3 weeks. What we found effective was breaking the committee down to 7 subcommittees, and each tasked with a specific charge. And Deputy Warden Madonna, she'll explain a little bit more in depth as to the charges of each subcommittee.
Good morning. Thank you. The first subcommittee that we developed was the identifying of the population, what the criteria would look like for the offenders and young adults that would live in the unit. So we would look at their disciplinary history, their length of sentence, their education and vocational needs, mental health and medical needs, and their programmatic needs. The next subgroup was the facility selection. What were the advantages and disadvantages of picking the site? We knew based on the number, as the Commissioner spoke earlier, it was over 3,000. We knew we could not repurpose an entire facility to accommodate all those offenders. However, what we did know that we needed was a celled environment based on the criteria above that I discussed. The program space, the facility would have to have adequate program space to accommodate all the programs we would be implementing. We would need to be able to separate this population from the general population. And there need to be a lot of opportunities for work and education. The next subcommittee worked on mission and vision statements. We worked with the external resources, and this would reflect a new culture and approach to working with the young adults. We knew that this was out-of-the-box thinking, and we would definitely need some external resources to assist in this process. The next subcommittee was staffing. Here they developed a new post plan and knew that we would need additional staff to work in this unit. This unit would be a more staff-intensive unit based on the population. The next subcommittee was treatments and programs. We knew we wanted this to be a therapeutic model. We met with young adults at our youth institution, Manson Youth Institution, and through conversations with them, it helped inform us on decisions about the model we wanted to implement. Staff training. We knew something specific needed to be completed for this population. There was nothing out there for us to use, so we developed it, partnered with Vera and other outside agencies. We knew this was the crucial key component to developing this program. And lastly, performance measures. Vera Institute would help us compile numbers and statistics along with outside vendors. We need to know, is what we're doing working, or do we need to make changes along the way to make this successful? Deputy Warden, any questions? I'm going to discuss challenges now. So some of the challenges that we had were the facility size. As I previously stated, we could not accommodate all the offenders. That's when we decided we would use a pilot unit at the facility that we chose. We also knew the layout had to make sense, that it had to meet all the criteria we had, cells, to be able to separate from the general population, and that it would be a central location, as we know that the family component would be key.
Another challenge, preparing our staff, the facility, the staff culture, staff buy-in, really just talking with staff, recognizing our staff culture in the facility. The Commissioner touched on that. Promoting buy-in from staff, emphasizing enhanced safety. What we found is that the unit is safer, and we were hoping that from the very beginning. Preparing staff to think in the gray, if you will.
Once we selected Cheshire CI, another challenge for us was we had to displace a special management group. So our administrative segregation inmates were placed in the unit we were going to use for this program. We had to find another facility that could accommodate based on the needs of those offenders. So it kind of created a domino effect for us. But we were able to find another facility that was able to take them. But that was a big feat for our population management unit to kind of move all those offenders around to accommodate them.
In our staff training, again, we're asking staff to step out of the box, to step away from what became the norm. Having the staff prepared and things to be considered, such as, what would the training curriculum actually look like, the size of the training classes, the length of the training, and the subject matter in itself.
Daily schedules, that was going to be key. That was brought back from Germany for these young adults, that their inside schedule mirrored the outside. So they would get up in the morning, they'd have breakfast, they'd make their beds, they'd either go to school or they'd go to work, they'd attend programs, and they would end their day the same. So we knew that this was vital in terms of adjusting the current schedule at the facility to meet the needs of this population. The therapeutic community model, the check-ins, all the different things outside the box for this facility. Although we have some of it around the state in our other facilities, this unit was going to look different. It was going to look different with the mentors. It was going to look different in the training that was provided to the staff. It was going to look different in the involvement of the staff. Staff that normally would just be custodial partners now will be involved in the actual programs, the daily schedule, how things are dealt with within the unit. So these were big differences in this program. Staff and offender recruitment. This was another challenge. So along with Vera, we developed a survey that would survey all of the 18 to 25 population throughout the entire state. And we would kind of get their feedback on what's working now, what's not working now, what would they like to see more of, and this would help in developing the model. We wanted to have a mix of offenders. And then there was an application process for both staff and the offenders. So they would complete a pretty scrutinized application, providing a lot of details about their experiences, and then they were selected based on that application.
And our behavior modification, as far as the offenders, designing an incentive-based program focuses on privileges and responsibilities for the offender. And our last that we have listed here, and by no means was this the last challenge that we faced, but the current policies review. By that we mean your visiting policy, the disciplinary process, restrictive housing, generally just a review of all current policies as they would relate to the young offender unit.
I'm going to turn it over to Warden Urphy now to talk about the TRUE unit.
I don't know if Alex would. All right, good morning, everybody. So we started off with the logo of the TRUE unit program, and as you can see, it's a road trying to show them that there is light at the end of the tunnel, little future ahead of them. TRUE stands for truthful, respectful, understanding, and elevating. This symbol, as well as the actual name of the program, came up from our first group of mentors as well as our staff. You'll see in one of the later slides that we refer to what we're doing in the TRUE unit as building the plane as we fly it. One of the things that I felt was important was that we took ideas from all the staff when they went through the training, as well as the mentors and some of the mentees, so as to get buy-in. The recruitment for the staff, it's important to note that all the staff volunteered. We didn't force anybody or tell anybody that they were going to be a part of this program. Everybody volunteered, and we selected them based on their experience. A lot of them, the majority of them actually have a previous experience in dealing with this type of population from previous jobs, and observations, actually talking to the supervisors to find out what their opinion of the staff was, as well as our own observations of them. Staff were selected to attend a 3-week training. They were in groups of 25, and a total of 100 staff were trained. Some of the topics of the training were motivational interviewing, human development, trauma-informed interventions for young adult offenders, and you can read the rest. Motivational interviewing was huge for our staff, and it has gone a long way. A lot of our staff have actually commented they've used that at home as well, and it's actually helped out their home life too, so that helps. The unit staffing that the group came up with was, as you can see, a first shift unit manager that is dedicated just for that unit. The regular unit managers in my facility have 2 to 3 units. This one has its own unit manager and its own unit supervisor, which is at the rank of a lieutenant, and they are both on day shift. 2 counselors as well, Monday through Friday, 4 housing unit officers, and 3 rovers. The rovers are primarily used to go and check on the mentees, as we refer to them, when they're at school, when they're at work, or during their family engagement visits, as well as regular contact visits. Just go and check on them and see how they're doing. Second shift, we have 2 counselors Monday through Friday, 4 housing unit officers, 4 rovers, and 1 school officer. The school officer is there basically for programming in the school after hours. And then third shift is 2 unit officers and 2 rovers. Regular complement for a housing unit at Cheshire is 2 housing unit officers and a rover that is split between 2 housing units. The mentors we chose, they were part of our lifer group, what we refer to as a lifer group, as the commissioner stated, individuals that have done a lot of time, are doing a lot of time. We had a group already in place, so what we did was we trained all 20 of them, and then we interviewed them. And based on the interviews, we selected 10 to actually live on the unit. They live in a single cell. There are 2 mentors for each group of 12 to 14 mentees. That's not saying that any mentee cannot go to another mentor. As you can see, some of the items that they were trained on, they were trained by our mental health department, as well as a group, an organization out of California called MILPA that Vera was kind enough to put us in touch with, and those are the subjects that they were taught in. The mentees were selected by application process. They filled out an application asking them various questions, such as who was inspirational in your life, what would you do with this second chance, why would you deserve a second chance. We also generated a database with some exclusionary information. One of the things that we didn't want at the facility was we didn't want to bring in any more mental health level 3s for the mental health staff to deal with, and we had to watch schooling where they were at their school, at their current facility, and would we be able to get them in Cheshire and take care of their needs. And we had to consider also demographics based on where they live, if it would be conducive for them to engage in the family engagement visits as well. Some of the differences that we have, the True Unit versus Gen Pop unit. Obviously, the addition of the custody staff and the counseling staff and the unit manager and lieutenant dedicated specifically for that unit. We were able to bring in an individual washer and dryer for that unit. It's actually in one of the cells that we repurposed. The rest of the facility has a centralized laundry. 14 hours out of cell time versus 2 hours. The rest of Cheshire is a 22-hour and 2-hour recreation, 1 hour in the morning, 1 hour in the afternoon facility, unless you have programming or you attend work. This unit itself, again, from the moment they wake up, they make their bed, they are out of their bed, out of their cell, and either programming, working, earned recreation, school, or something of that nature. Another thing we have that's discipline is the disciplinary report versus the CAP system. The CAP is a corrective action plan. So when an inmate creates an infraction, staff member obviously has an option to write them a disciplinary report depending on the infraction. What we try to do in the True Unit is stay away from the disciplinary report if we can and use the corrective action plan, which is an individualized action plan for that particular person. It could be anything from extra duty to writing a letter and presenting that to the unit itself, basically what they did, why they did it, what they would do differently next time, and have them take accountability for their actions. This is also one of the things that the staff had to realize, that it actually gave them more power to deal with the population rather than less, because the way our discipline support system works, an individual who was not involved in the incident itself determines if they were guilty or innocent and then hands out sanctions. The actual staff member is involved in the CAP process with the unit leadership, and it is individualized, like I said, and it allows them to work in the gray and have more control. The family engagement visits, our normal contact visits, the way we have it is the inmate sits on one side, their loved one sits on the other side. There is no hand holding. You get a brief kiss and hug in the beginning and the end of the visit. With family engagements, it is a more personalized approach. They get to sit next to each other. If they have children, they can hold the children. And what I stress to the loved ones is that they don't just talk about normal visiting stuff. They also talk about what they have done in the unit, what they've learned, how they plan to use that when they get out on the street. Each mentee has a composition book that they write in every day, and they just notes of what they've done in the unit, stuff they've learned, their future plans, and that's the kind of stuff that they go over as well. Also during these family engagement visits, the family may be given homework depending on what we're doing in the unit and what we're working on. Again, increased custodial staff interactions. It's very staff intensive as far as interactions with the population. Again, they're out 14 hours a day versus 2, and the staff in there do not just do the tour, or I don't have 4 staff sitting behind the desk watching the population recreate. They are actually out and about among the population. One officer stays at the desk and everybody else is out. We have custodial staff-led programs. Historically, correctional officers do not run programs. The staff of this unit have actually volunteered to start running certain programs, such as Well, it teaches them how to tie a tie, something simple like that, writing checks, balancing a checkbook, resume writing, some of those functions. What happened? We have mentor-led programs as well. Again, in Connecticut, we don't typically have mentors run programs. The mentors actually run the programs, again, realizing that they walk the walk and talk the talk, so who better to have them actually teach them what not to do than somebody who actually made those mistakes. Like I said, the mentors have single cells. They also get family engagement visits. The cells are, we had some cells that emptied for expression rooms, religious room, and a barber shop. In the barber shop, they have a real mirror. I know it doesn't seem like a big thing, but to actually see yourself in a clear picture was a good incentive. We brought in the bus stop mentality, like we said, realizing that a lot of our inmates are institutionalized to the point where they fall asleep, even in the real world, from 11 to 2 during count time. We've implemented a bus stop mentality. The bus stop is the officer station, and the daily schedule is posted in the unit. So rather than making intercom announcements, the mentees know that if they are supposed to go to a certain program at 9:30 in the morning, then they are to be at that bus stop, and we will not hold their hand and tell them to come to us so we can take them to the program. It's trying to teach them how to act in the real world. And again, they're not on their bunks during waking hours. They don't go back into their cells until it's time to at the end of the night. For programs, again, programs are created and run by custody as well as treatment staff, the mentors, and we also have volunteers that come in strictly for this unit. The family engagement program, again, I explained that. It's a huge part. We have a slide on that later. The currency program. The currency program actually came up from the mentors themselves. What happened was I took a trip with Vera down to Maryland, and they had a point system for their student athletes, they call them. And we took that point system, I brought it back to the mentors and asked them to create something that was similar. And what they did was they took it and they came up with a currency program that basically is a 2-year program. It is, the first 6 months is phase 1, phase 2 is the next 6 months, and so on and so forth. And it basically will prepare them for life. So we have a bank, a makeshift bank. They get money at the end of the first 6 months, which is not real money. It's just they're given a loan of $3,000, and out of that money they have to pay rent. If we have to call in maintenance to fix their cell, then they have to pay that fee. They have to pay child support if they have children of their own. And they are left with roughly, the average mentee is going to be left with roughly $600 at the end of the month. That $600 they can invest in another program. They can create their own program. Other mentees can buy stock in a program, and it'll teach them how to be an entrepreneur, teach them what they're going to need to know from the first day they get out of prison all the way through and hopefully become a good citizen. So the family engagement portion, each group is split up, and again, to 12 to 14 inmates. Group A was the first. They've had 26 scheduled sessions of family engagement out of the 91 opportunities from May 1st to August 1st. Group B has had 17, and Group C has 9. Group D just became eligible last Friday. So we're trying to see if the family engagement portion is working. It seems to be working. It wasn't as big as what I originally thought it was going to be, but again, a lot of these are done during the day, and we do as many as we can at night to accommodate all different types of schedules. How does the true unit compare? Is it really working? I would definitely say yes. So far, we've had 3 reportable incidents in the unit. One was a staff member knowing the mother of one of the mentees. One was a possible SRG or security risk group affiliation. One of my officers saw an inmate doing a hand sign, a gang's hand sign, and what he thought was, so we pulled the mentee out, spoke to him, and there hasn't been an issue since. And then one was a verbal altercation, possible physical altercation, but it was unwitnessed by staff, and there were no apparent signs of trauma, so we handled that accordingly. Statewide, these are numbers from last week. Statewide, our count was 14,110. Cheshire was 1,281, and the True Unit has 53. 11 of those are mentors. I have 208 18 to 25-year-olds, and statewide there's 2,460. There's the percentages of the population. Again, statewide is 25% of the reportable incidents come from an 18 to 25-year-old. Cheshire runs right around 15%, and the True Unit is less than 1% for reportable incidents. The disciplinary report. So I spoke about the CAP system before. As you can see, the True Unit DRs, there's only been 2, one Class A and one Class B ticket, Class A being the more serious. If we were to take all the CAPs, or the corrective action plans, and turn those into disciplinary reports, then there would have been 4 Class A's, 8 Class B's, and 24 Class C tickets, for a total of 36. And as you can see, the rest of the 18 to 25-year-olds for Cheshire is responsible for 162 tickets. So I would definitely say that it is working. Some of the obstacles, I would love to say that there was only 3, but there wasn't. But here's the 3 major ones. Cultural change. Like I said, Cheshire is a 22-2 facility. So the ideal of having the population out for 14 hours was a concern for some staff. Some of the rumors that went around, I couldn't even tell you some of the crazy rumors that I heard that, you know, staff were going to get different uniforms, touchy-feely uniforms, stuff like that. But rumors are definitely going to run rampant if you decide to do this. And the acceptance of the ideology. Again, like I said, we went from 22-2 to 14 hours out of cell in this one particular unit. Union buy-in. Union buy-in, as long as you tell them what's going to happen, explain the ideology, explain that it's going to make it safer, explain that it will reduce staff trauma to incidents. Obviously, the numbers dictate that and show that. And just keep them informed. It really wasn't as big an obstacle as I was thinking it was going to be. So I'm very thankful for that. We have a good relationship with our union, so that helps. Again, probably the biggest obstacle was number 3, building the plane as we fly it. Again, we are making changes to this every single day, and it's basically we are taking the ideas of the mentees, the mentors, staff that work the unit, staff that don't work the unit, and everybody. So we also involve the family, and if they have an idea, we have taken those as well. The success, staff have less trauma and a more fulfilling job. Again, they're running groups. Correctional officers running groups is unheard of in this state. A lot of my staff that worked at unit just say how the time flies, and it's a lot more fulfilling for them to go in, do their 8, and it doesn't even seem like 8 to them anymore. We have a lower report of reportable incidents relative to the statewide stats and lower disciplinary interactions as a result. And like I said, we are preparing them to successfully reintegrate into society and hopefully not come back and be a True Unit graduate and back enter the facility. So with that, I will turn it over to Alexandra Frank.
Thank you, Warden Urfi. Thank you, everyone, for everything you said. So I'm going to talk a little bit about joining the initiative, and before I do, I want to call attention to a couple things. One, the things that Commissioner Semple pointed to at the start of this webinar as the reasons why this is important for Connecticut to focus on are also reasons that a lot of states have been interested in exploring working differently with young adults in general. Nationally, young adults are a priority population because they're overrepresented in facility-based incidents and are more likely to end up in solitary confinement. They're disproportionately high rates of reincarceration compared to any other age group for young adults. And so this work, both the work in Connecticut, both is the sort of best example of that, but also of the innovation that can be accomplished when concentrated energy and focus is paid to this population. And so we've, like I said earlier, sort of our partnership with Connecticut was the start of this initiative, and then we expanded to include Massachusetts, Middlesex County Jail and House of Corrections, and are today excited to open up this initiative to other agencies, jails and prisons interested in participating in this. The goals of this initiative are really reflected in everything that the Commissioner and Wardens Buttricks and Urquhart and Deputy Warden Madano shared. The goals are to create safety, to make facilities safer for young adults and staff to live and work in, for everyone to live and work in. These reforms should be done with an eye towards increasing safety for everyone. So that's the top priority. The second is fostering connections, that young adults, like all people, need relationships in order to function and thrive. And we are seeking to make those connections, those relationships, family connections, community connections, and relationships between those who work and live in facilities, a keystone of this initiative. The third is to facilitate healing, that a lot of the work that is done has to be done with an eye towards promoting healing from a trauma-informed place. A lot of those who are incarcerated and staff who work in facilities have experienced trauma, and so we need to create a program model and an approach that promotes healing from past experience, and that does that by celebrating family and cultural traditions and things that young people can identify with and help cultivate their identity. And the third is to promote equity, that we really prioritize thinking about this from a racial equity lens, and that young people are able to access opportunities and resources that they need in order to be successful. So, you know, we started with learning about Connecticut in particular because it's the work that they've done has been so innovative and has really, you know, the thing I've told them is they took a leap into water that they couldn't see to the bottom of, and are still building the plane while they fly it, as Warden Murphy said, but every day that goes by and every new idea that gets created and tested and refined is just taking the field that much further to raising the bar on young adult reform nationally. So for this initiative, we are seeking applications from jails and prisons, corrections agencies across the country who want to do this too, who want to join the initiative, who want to transform the care and custody of young adults in their system, and you know, want to take a leap with that. So how do you apply? There's a three-step process. The first is a letter of interest. So we're asking agencies to write a letter of interest, no more than 3 pages. The letter of interest should address 3 questions. Why is young adult prison reform needed and important to your agency? What are the goals for this project? You know, we recognize that each agency, state, locality is different and has different needs and strengths to build upon. And so we really want to hear about what are the goals for your agency in particular, and what's needed and important for your agency in particular. And then third, how will your agency meet some of the requirements? So some of the requirements are just what Warden Buttricks and Deputy Warden Madano pointed to earlier, that they convened a stakeholder work group. They were the 2 point people on this initiative. You know, being able to kind of pull the people together needed to do this. And it's not that, you know, we definitely don't say that agencies need to have the answers to some of the questions that Connecticut has answered. That took us months to be able to answer those questions, as they kind of alluded to earlier. That's something that we do in partnership with the agency. We figure out, you know, is it a facility, is it a unit, where, how many young adults, how will we recruit staff? Those are questions that we figure out together, but that agencies are sort of poised to assemble a work group and a team to jump into this together. the requirement needed at the onset. The second step is a phone interview. So upon getting the letters of interest, we'll schedule a phone call with some of the agencies that have applied to do a phone interview. The third is a site visit. We'll schedule a visit to your jurisdiction to be able to tour some of the facilities, meet with your staff, meet with the folks who might be leading this initiative, and also meet with the data people. Vera is a research institute first and foremost, and so everything we do is driven by the data. And they spoke earlier about the survey process that we do, and so that's one of the things that we would talk about too, how we would collect this information, how we would use it to drive our decision making, and then we would, in December, by December 20th, notify sites that they've been selected, and then in January, host a kickoff meeting for the site. To find the application, you can go to the Vera website, the Young Adult Project page, and there's, starting right now actually, there is a tab called Join the Initiative, and you can download the application instructions from there and submit your letter of interest by October 25th. So with that, we're going to now turn to some questions that we've received from folks who are participating. The first I will answer real quick is the webinar being recorded? Will we make it available in the coming weeks on Vera's website? The answer is yes, we will. So the webinar is being recorded. It's going to be on that same Join the Initiative page on Vera's website, and we will be able to send out an email actually to everyone who's participating today after this webinar with the link that you can just directly click rather than having to search for it anywhere, but you'll be able to have that. The second question is about performance measures. So what performance measures are we using, and how will we know whether or not this is successful? I can start the answer to this, and then I'm going to pass it over to my colleagues in Connecticut. But basically, when we started this project, the survey that was mentioned earlier was both the way that we designed the model and designed staff training, but it also offered a benchmark to start from. So Vera creates a survey that asks questions across 4 or 5 domains. One is about safety, perceptions of safety. One is about family contact and community contact and family engagement. One is about healing. And the last is about purpose, which is how do you define success for yourself and what do you need to be successful? We designed the survey both for young adults across the state and for staff who work in the facilities. And that gave us a lot of information. We also go back and we meet with young adults and staff about the data to get their impressions about what the hypotheses should be and what the recommendations should be coming out of it. We're replicating that process for the process evaluation. So process evaluation started, I guess, officially in May, and we'll be continuing for the first year, and it basically includes looking at administrative data that Connecticut is providing to us, and then repeating a survey process every 3 to 4 months for the next year. And we'll be repeating that collaborative research approach where we bring the data back to line staff and young adults and mentors to get to work with them and partner with them on, what does the data mean? What is it telling us? What do we need to course correct as a result of the data, and so on. And then Warden Urfi or Connecticut, do you guys want to comment more about performance measures?
Well, as I showed earlier, the number of incidents that come out of that unit are very minimal compared to the rest of Cheshire, as well as the rest of the state, as well as the disciplinary reports. And like I showed in the slide, even if you take all the corrective action plans and do away with that and turn them into disciplinary reports, the numbers still show that this ideology is definitely working. You have a total of 36 incidents as opposed to 162. You know, that's 126 less opportunities for our staff to get injured, for the population to be injured. You know, 126 less opportunities for trauma all the way around. So I would definitely say it's working, you know, on the ground. Not to mention the interactions that we've had with the family during family engagement, as well as the phone calls that we've made to them. It is definitely working.
This is Scott Semple. So with regard to KPIs or key performance measures, they have some embedded performance measures that they have that are specific to the unit. And then we have some kind of core KPIs that we apply, such as our recidivism formula and things of that nature. Obviously, as I indicated earlier, this is very much in its infancy, so we won't have that data as far as what recidivism looks like for at least a year, and that would only give us about a third of the data that we would lean on in terms of how we roll out recidivism over a 3-year period. But that being said, I agree with the warden. Kind of the initial numbers that are coming back to us, and I think I said earlier, what is so surprising is, quite frankly, I expected to see some more levels of impulsivity, and I'm attributing that reduction to the family reintegration piece, where there's a partnership and collaboration, not only among the correctional professionals, but with the staff and the offender. But also, I think the mentors are having a huge impact on finding alternative ways to deal with impulsive tendencies. We probably will have to have some more discussion about, you know, how to make a good faith effort to prove what I'm telling you. With that being said, I didn't add earlier, but although we've only been in this for a short period of time, we're already intending to expand what we do. So right now, as we speak, we're working on opening another unit at the York Correctional Institution for women, and we're also in discussion with expanding this program to another housing unit at the location where Warden Murphy currently resides. And the thing that I also want to emphasize is we did not cherry pick this population to try to find folks that were going to get us through the beginning phases of this program. In fact, we all came to the agreement that we wanted to challenge the staff, so we took a versatile bunch of folks with varying backgrounds to try to see very quickly if what the outcomes of this could be.
Thank you, Commissioner. So we only have 2 short minutes left, and so with that, we got a lot of really good questions. One I'll just mention quickly is this connected to sentencing and reentry reform? And that's a big question. There's both an answer that I'll give right now about that relative to the Restoring Promise Initiative, and then another answer to that specific to Connecticut that we will post on the Vera website after this. But basically, for this initiative, the focus is currently just on living conditions for young adults. So what happens on the inside of a facility to ensure that young people are connected to programs and opportunities that will create safety and promote their ability to be successful when they leave and increase family contact. So again, the focus is specifically on living conditions, what happens inside, rather than what happens before they get in. So it's not concentrated on sentencing reform. And while there is a focus on preparing young people to return home, it's not a reentry initiative. So there is a longer answer to that, that Connecticut to the Connecticut story. And what we're going to do is all of the questions that we got a lot of really good questions in from you all. We're going to type them up. We're going to get with our partners in Connecticut and answer all of them and put them on the Vera website. So with that, I want to thank everyone for participating. We have an email address that you can reach out to us at restoringpromise@vera.org. And those who participated in today's webinar, we will send an email to all of you with the linking to the page on Vera's website with this information and the questions and answers. Thank you again so much for participating, and we look forward to potentially working with you in the future.